Do good work is not a label, but a way of living. It is the constant and diligent effort to achieve a new level of excellence in one's own life. It is the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve excellence. It's not perfect, but imperfect. It is the effort, discipline, and focus that often goes unnoticed. The goal of Do Good Work is to highlight that drive. The guests I have on this show emulate this drive in their own special way. You'll be able to apply new ideas into your own life by learning from them. We will also have one-on-one episodes with me where we'll dive into my own experience with entrepreneurship and leadership. Every episode is designed to provide you with ideas that you can apply and grow in excellence in all areas of your life, business, and career. Today on the show, I have Dr. Addyson-Zhang. She's an educator and an entrepreneur and has received her MA and Ph.D. in communication from Syracuse University and the University of Maryland. She's the founder of Classroom Without Walls, an alternative school to future-proof the next generation. As an Adobe education leader, Dr. I specializes in incorporating social media and creative technologies into a traditional curriculum to enhance student engagement and acquire 21st century skills. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Insider Higher Education, Pearson Education, Entrepreneur, Today's Show, and more. On her own shows, she's interviewed leaders in business and education such as Seth Godin and Guy Kawasaki. She serves as an Adobe educational leader and HubSpot Academy instructor and speaks at academic and industry conferences including Inbound, VidCon, Social Media Daily, Social Media Week Lima, which is the largest marketing conference in the Midwest, and others. She's on the mission to future-proof the next generation by teaching them what schools are currently not. Dr. I, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really honored.
I really love everything that you're doing in regards to education and how you're moving a lot in the online space. But I do want to bring up one point that in our initial conversation, you called yourself a professor dropout. And I love that I love that term, but can you bring us up to speed of the journey of why you dropped out as a professor?
Yeah, totally. What a great way to start our conversation. And so I'm a first generation immigrant and I grew up in China and I hated Chinese educational system. And everything is really based on memorization and based on exams and a very, very intense competition. And I don't feel like we learned anything other than math and physics and chemistry, really heavily focused on science. And I really hated that, but I did really well throughout my educational journey. And on the outside, I was like thriving, loves learning, but in the inside, I was paralyzed. And so when I was young, I was like, you know what, I need to go to a different country to see how other people learn. I was really suffering. It was like, I remember when I was young, like 5 years old, I was asking my parents all sorts of very interesting questions, where do humans come from, the globe, the earth, physics. And as I grew older, I just lost interest in learning. So I was looking at the globe one day at home, and then I discovered the United States. And then I heard you can actually study in the US with scholarship. And I never heard of that when I was a student kid in China. I was like, wow, people will actually give you money to study. And that was really my very first motivation to learn English and to leave China to come to a different country. And I want to be away from my parents as further as possible. So I left China when I was 21 years old, very young. And I came to the US and I went to Syracuse, got my master's degree. And then later I went to University of Maryland where I got my PhD. And while I was earning my degrees and I was already teaching classes, our classes were huge, like 300 students, 400 students. So eventually after I got my PhD, I started teaching at a very small liberal arts college because I love the small class size. And a few years into my teaching career, I was like, wow, the US educational system is not as amazing as I have envisioned when I was a kid in China, and I started to see parallels between the Chinese educational system and the current US educational system. And I started to see missing links. And at the same time, and I noticed that the way that I'm teaching my students is not working, is not really engaging the students. And like most students, they have this indifferent look on their face. They couldn't care less about what I'm saying. The only thing they cared about is their academic performance. And when I was having conversations with my teachers, with my friends in different schools, it is pretty much the same across different institutions. And so I knew the teaching method was not working. But I didn't know what to do because I grew up in a broken educational system. And the way that I learned to teach was how I learned from my advisors when I was, receiving my master and PhD, is really by and large based on exams and based on lectures. And students, they were just, actually research has shown this. And I think a few years ago or last year, Gallup, they did a big study. They studied 5 million students, and they discovered students, their disengagement rate is very, very high, and 50%. And students, they think their classes are really bored, and they think their classes they are really tired when they are at school. And so I started to read the studies like that. And there's another one that came out saying that students, their GPA, grade point average, is actually inversely related to innovation. I was like, wow.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And there's another big study conducted by NASA. They want to see how creative our children are. So they asked the 4 years old, 5 years old, hey, how many ways can you think of using a paper clip? So the young children, they were like, yes, this, and that. So they give like hundreds of ideas, and they scored 98% in terms of creativity. But 5 years later, they studied the same group of children. So their creativity dropped to 50%. Another 5 years later, the number continued to drop. So by the time they graduate, emerging professionals, 2%. So from 98% to 2%, what happened, right? So what happened is that our children become more educated. And so all the studies like that, GPA, creativity, and I was like, wow, what am I doing here, right? Like, I know this is not working. At the same time, I'm reading all those studies. And then parallel to this, I gave birth. So I gave birth to 2 boys and 2 young children myself. So my older son, when he turned 7, he started to complain about school. This is so boring. I don't want to go. I'm like falling asleep. I was like, what? Like, like my own classes, my own struggle, and all the studies I read. So I asked myself, do I want to be part of the problem to continue to perpetuate the situation? Or do I want to be part of the solution? What I did discover as being, a professor for 10 plus years is that the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. So if I wanted to innovate, especially radical innovation, and if I'm still within the system, it is very, very challenging. It is much better to be outside the system to create something new. So that's kind of my long story to answer your very simple question. And I decided to resign from my associate professor position and started to build a better house for the next generation.
And I want to dive into a lot of points, and I thank you so much for sharing that. One of the key highlights that I do want to point out, though, and this is something from, maybe a mentor that you and I look up to, Seth Godin, safe is normal. Right. And you're doing something that's completely innovative, and that's unsafe. And I think that can also draw parallels in regards to the drops in creativity, institutionalized. And but I just wanted to congratulate you for stepping outside of the safe spot and doing everything normally and creating real disruption and real innovation in the way that you're doing that with your schools. I really wanted to highlight that piece. And then looking at, I'm
Can
really
I also
curious.
add a point to what you mentioned?
Yeah.
And you give us such a great point, and I love Seth Godin. So recently, I have just become certified by brain-centric design, which is a group of neuroscientists. So I really started to understand our brain from neuroscience perspective. Like human beings, we actually have 3 brains, not just one, but actually 3. So one of the 3 brains is called reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is the one that prefers predictability. We want everything to be safe, to be predictable. And every time we're outside the comfort zone, and our reptilian brain is telling, no, there's danger out there, fight, flight, don't do that. So it is our human instinct to not make change, to be where we are, to prefer the way things are, as opposed to be outside the comfort zone.
That's huge. And I think we can dive into that in a bit and how, if you're implementing that in your school, but I definitely want to also talk about, so you go on to create a new, a different system that supports, the future of generations. So I'm really curious, for a lot of our listeners, either right now with everything happening, they're homeschooling or they have to homeschool, or they were homeschooling, but also their children are pretty much the future of the workforce, future of entrepreneurship, future of business. One of the key distinctions that I want to ask before we move into everything in regards to the school and the program is this for everyone? Who is this specifically for?
Yeah, so for my school, we actually do a mixed age model. So we try to disrupt quite a few things in the traditional educational system. And one thing that we try to disrupt is the peer-to-peer learning structure. And we want to create a mixed age learning environment, because when you look at real life, right? In real life, you do not only work with people of the same age. In my case, I work with, one of my clients is way older than me. And so we work with people who are younger, who are older, very mixed age environment. But our children, they don't really have a mixed age environment to practice intergenerational communication. And that's why actually many of my own undergraduate students, they really struggle with communication. So at my school, we do a mixed age model. So the youngest that we take is around 13 years old, and we go above. The cohort we just finished, and our youngest one is 17, and our oldest one is 48. You can really see the age gap. But it is really beautiful, because many students, they think, I only learn when I go to a school, right? I only learn when I'm physically inside a class, or taking a class. But you and I, we know that is not the case, right? Yeah. I'm a lifelong learner. Learning doesn't only happen in the classroom. So when they see someone much older, in their eye, there should never be a student again in the same classroom as those young children. They feel like, wow, right? Learning is an ongoing journey. And I just love seeing and sending that message to our young students. And I love the mixed age model, because what we discuss in our curriculum is very hard to be defined by age, right? Yeah. Just because you are 40, it doesn't mean you know a lot more about digital networking. You know how to launch a podcast. You know more about neuroplasticity. Age shouldn't be a defining factor in terms of learning. I think we should all disrupt that and accept the fact that we should be lifelong learners. So we do a mixed age model. Yeah.
It's a huge mindset shift. So on top of the mixed age model, what are some of the other themes or topics that you help your students to thrive in, to not only become future proof, but also in the way that you instill a different learning model that's non-traditional?
Yeah, so totally. Yeah. So I actually developed an iceberg model, because I want to share with parents that, as I told you earlier, academic performance is actually universally related to innovation. But most parents who talk with me, they are overly concerned about their children's GPA 4.0, how many A's. That is the only thing they care about, as if academic performance is the only thing that matters to future-proof their children. True. Which is actually not. So the tip of my iceberg model is actually school-based learning, which we don't really cover. So at Classroom Without Walls, we cover everything underneath the tip of the iceberg. And so we have 3 core components, which includes new media, digital literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to prepare students to enter today's show me economy. And traditionally, and even now, students are still working on their resumes, right? Like on a piece of paper, you are telling me, I got this degree, I'm really good at this. That is the tell me economy. You are telling me how good you are. But no, in this day and age, I want you to show me how good you
Prove
are.
it, right?
You say, exactly. You say that you are an amazing public speaker, you are really good at graphic design, blah, blah, or coding. Show me what you have accomplished. And very few students actually know how they can tap into social media to practice this show me economy. Because most children, their relationship with social media is only to socialize and to be entertained, right? Chatting with their friends, sending selfies, and following celebrities. But very few of them actually know how they can use social media and the creative technologies to practice storytelling, story selling, and marketing who they are, to inspire a social movement, to create change, to educate others regarding what they know. They don't know that. So we really supplement that to teach people what is LinkedIn, how to practice digital networking, and how to launch a video podcast. Actually, one of my students, I coached her to launch a podcast, and she did like 2 episodes, and she already got a job after she did her very first episode. Yeah, like it was really amazing, and her mom is really, really happy, and she hasn't even graduated from college yet. So that is one element, new media. And the second core component that we cover is life skills. I discovered, and many parents told me that their children have no life skills. And we discussed, the 4C to be future ready, which include communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And we also added emotional intelligence. And so for each concept, we don't just talk about it, we actually practice project-based learning. So for example, for collaboration, I invited my friends, like some top trainers and students based in Singapore. So they actually joined our online classroom to collaborate on something, to communicate on something. And it's such an eye-opening experience for the students to first understand people look at things very differently. And second, even on a very superficial level, there are actually time zone differences. Believe it or not, many of our American students, they don't even know there are different time zones within the United States, right?
I remember the first time I had a phone call with someone in Thailand in 2015, 16, and I was like amazed. Like, I can't believe we're having this phone call. And
I know, exactly. And I think, to me, that is the true power of an online class. Unfortunately, I don't think many online classes happening right now, they are tapping into the true power of technology. They are only using their computer to deliver content, to deliver information, as opposed to use computer to humanize, to globalize, to digitize the learning environment. But anyway, so that is another component. And do you want to say something?
No, I really like the fact that you talked about humanizing. That, like, just not just, the digital networking can get overglossed that you're talking to a computer, not a person, but bring in the human element to it, seeing that this is real, there's another person, and it's I think that mindset shift at such a young age is critical. For me, when I was going through college, college was great. It was a great experience. However, my real experience was a program that was only quote unquote 2 credits. I didn't add to my GPA, but it exposed me to like some of the entrepreneurs here in San Diego. It changed my life. Just that mere exposure.
Totally, and I can't agree more with you. And that humanizing component is so important. And again, many teachers, they are used to this sage on the stage model, right? I'm a sage. They are like robots. They don't eat, they don't laugh, they don't do anything. They just talk, they just lecture. They are perfect, right? They don't say no, they don't be silly. And so I think that model is broken. Like, how can another human being relate to a sage? Nobody, right? You are two way above and beyond me, right? And plus, now we're online, which makes everything a lot more distant compared to the face-to-face. So I think with online classes, in fact, the completion rate for online classes is only 15%, 1.5. And most online classes right now, the quality is really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And the students are really struggling. So on top of that, you have this sage on the stage, it does not work. So teachers really need to understand how they can really use social media, for example, Instagram stories, to connect with the students where they are, right? Today's students are digital learners. You need to be where they are as opposed to where we think they should be. One of my very favorite learning theories in education is the 70-20-10 model. So what this model talks about is for every learner to have a transformation from where they are, point A, to where they want to be, point B. For this transformation to occur, only 10% out of this transformation comes from formal learning, reading a book, taking a class, or listening to a podcast, and passive learning, only 10%. And 20% is the social atmosphere of learning, social learning and peer-to-peer discussion. That's why I'm not a big fan of only watching pre-recorded videos. I mean, you have to also have an in-person component, right? You watch this video, let's talk about this, a more hybrid model. So the social atmosphere is 20%. So 70% of that transformation is application, experiential learning, learn through real life projects, challenges. And so that is my favorite model. So, but most teachers, when they think about learning, is only 10%, right? They are talking so much about the 10% as if the 10% or the 100%. It is definitely not the case. And so that's like what I want to share. And so I discussed new media literacy, life skill. The last component at my school we cover is mindset. And from my own journey and like learning, talking with people like you, learning from others, I discovered success is an inside out journey. And the more we transform the inside, the more we transform the outside. Every single being, a human being, we have baggage, right? For children and before 8 years old, and we don't really have our analytical brain yet. So everything that our parents, our teachers are telling us, we take that in as fact, right? If my teacher is telling me you are so bad at math, you are not creative, you are so thin, you are so fat, you are so annoying, you are a troublemaker. So we take them in and as facts, and they become our identity. So it is really important for children to understand that. And for parents, if they have children younger than 8, they have to really watch how they are talking to their children. But as a student, we have to go through this learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? And so we work with our students to understand who they are and to recognize the scars inside them, right? And to unlearn that part, to learn how they can rewire their brain, can reprogram their subconscious mind to design the life based on their vision of the future as opposed to their memory of the past. And very few students, they actually know that, wow, like my brain, I'm so powerful. I have so much potential. They don't really see that because they're so used to being labeled by their teachers, right? When you think about our educational journey and our teachers and parents, they are so good at telling us what we are not good at, right? We go to tutors, prep classes, but what we are really good at, we don't really talk much about it. And so as a result of that, very few students actually know, who am I? This is what I want in life. And those are my strengths. So most children, they don't know what they are good at, but in contrast, they know everything they are really bad at. So when students come to me, they are lost. They don't have any confidence. So we really work with students to go within, to discover who they are, to understand their brain. We learn more about neuroplasticity and positive affirmation and journaling. and all those things. So that's the third component of my program, which is mindset. So we cover those three elements to future-proof a kid.
And I think that's super powerful. If you're listening to this and your student is, or you have a child or a student going to school right now, if you are homeschooling right now, or if you are a course creator, educator, consultant, or coach, where you educate a tribe or a group of people, even if it's adults, like I think those three things, the digital landscape, the actual practical application of it, as well as the social. So if you have like an information product, or if you're teaching, it can't just be content. It has to be the social component, but that's even falling too short. It has to be the project-based application. I think that's a huge insight as well, that our listeners can take away from. I want to ask you this one question, and this is looking, so we were just discussing a lot about the school, how it functions and all the impact that you're making. And I do want to ask more questions in regards to some of the student successes that you've had. But I'm really curious for you, you're pretty much having your own founder's journey as an entrepreneur and running this as a startup. Can you share some of those insights?
Yeah, definitely an emotional journey, a very emotional journey. And I think I of course I made lots of mistakes and also lots of challenges. I think the biggest challenge for me was to disassociate myself from an identity that I was familiar with for almost my entire life, because I spent my entire life in education. I got so many degrees and then started teaching in the classroom for 10 plus years. So my identity was fixed. I was a teacher. And so in 2017, and I decided to reinvent myself because I was like, wow, like I'm just tired of this. And that was really uncomfortable for me at a deep, very emotional level. That's why I said you have to transform the inside in order to transform the outside. And I was moving away from the only identity I was familiar with. So I was asking myself, who am I going to become? I don't know, right? This new person is like, I'm giving birth to a new person that I don't even know who is this new person. I'm literally building like a building as I draw the blueprint. And so that part was very, very uncomfortable for me. And, again, now after I understand a little bit more about our brain, is that our brain prefers to everything to be predictable. So what I was doing to myself was being on this unknown. I was tapping into the unknown. That is scary to my brain and, of course, to myself. And that was the most challenging part, and to really reinvent myself. But I really recommend, I think everyone should go through this and to really discover who you are, to see your true potential. Like 5 years ago, and I started to be really active on social media because I was like, if I want my students to be future ready, I need to be future ready myself. I can no longer use my, the fame, whatever, with a PhD to protect myself, right? And I have to walk the talk. And so I was teaching public relations classes, communication classes, and later social media classes. But I never actually practiced any of them. It is just not valued in higher education. So I decided to become a practitioner. So I was practicing everything I was teaching my students. And I started to be really active online, on Twitter, on different social media platforms, Meerkat, Blab, all the live streaming platforms. I jumped into them, and I launched my very first live streaming show 3 years ago. But the intention was really simple. Like, I'm a teacher. I want to be a better teacher. I never thought about, quitting my job, starting my own business, starting my own classes. I never thought about that. But the reinvention journey, really going deep within me and asking myself, what do I want in life? And really opened my heart to see what is possible. So that was a big challenge. And another one is really working with coaches. And I believe in investing in coaches. And but before, like, I wanted to figure everything out myself, right? I'm pretty good at teaching myself, identifying resources. And I think you can do that. But again, going back to the 70-20-10 model, information does not lead to transformation. Information plus application combined will lead to transformation. And that application process, if you have a coach working with you to guide you, to facilitate the transformation, will be much, much easier. And I wish I started working with coaches earlier and could really shorten my learning curve. But eventually, and I did invest in some coaches, and I feel really thankful for the good coaches who are ahead of me for a few years, and also who introduced me to a network of other entrepreneurs who are making 7-figure, 8-figure, crushing it, doing really well, generating income and impact. Again, they show me what is possible. That has also inspired me a lot. So those are kind of 2 key takeaways. And I guess another one is show up consistently.
Oh, yeah.
And I love how you are having a podcast. I have 2 podcasts myself. I show up very consistently on social media. And everything that I talk about, again, is in alignment with my business. And you don't want to make the mistake that you just show up randomly and talking about random stuff, which I did when I was on social media many years ago. But now I run a business. I'm very clear about why I'm on social media, right? To share content, to offer value to my audience, and eventually they will like me and trust me and purchase from me. Just like last week, there's a woman based in Saudi Arabia. And I was like, wow. And she reached out to me. She said, I want to send my children to your program. I was like, I don't even know who you are. But she told me, I have been following you for a few years. I was like, a few years? But never engaged with me at all, right? So I discovered there are lots of people, if you have the good content and they will consume your content, they will like build that trust with you through your content, and eventually they will purchase from you. So it is really important that you show up consistently.
The long-term game. You drop so much wisdom, and I do want to highlight the fact that you did not mention that building a school, training children, helping them become future-proof was the hardest part. You highlighted that the hardest part was the mindset. And I don't want our listeners just to gloss over that, because I think, to be honest with you, a lot of transformation does start from within, the decision to change. So it's not just, I don't know, hocus pocus mind. It's really just working on yourself and becoming better. It's like a muscle, right? And focusing on that day in, day. And I thought that was really important. And then you also focus on the highlighting of not just shortcutting, but also going through a path that's been taken and having others show you a way. Like, well, if you want to take this path, it might be shorter based on my experiences. So shared experiences, you can only learn either from yourself and your own experiences or from others' experiences. And I think investing in information, courses, trainers, consultants, I think it's very valuable, even for me in my journey too. Just having mentors there by me, having coaches there support me and show me, like, it's incremental growth. And the last part, and you talked about building a long-term asset, is the patience game, right? Like, this woman was following you for years, and it's a long-term play, knowing that if you're really aligned with the mission that you're doing, you're really following that journey, and you're actually taking action consistently over time, will equal results in this huge snowball that you didn't even know existed, as opposed to saying, I need X amount of people this month, which makes sense in business. You need both. But I love the fact that you look at the bigger picture and the long-term game as well.
Yeah, totally. And the first point, I didn't even realize that. Yes. I mean, like, building a school is hard, right? Figuring things out.
It's not easy, yeah.
How to do this is very hard. But reflecting on my journey, it is definitely not as hard as reinventing my own identity. That internal shift and persuading myself or training myself to believe in myself, to silence the self-talk, the negative self-talk. Who am I to do this? There is Mind Valley, there are out school, there are all the schools out there. Who am I to do this? And to really silence that and learn to believe myself, that part is like way harder than actually building the school. I think building the school is like starting a business. There's a step step-by-step process, right? You do first, you identify the problem, you offer the solution, and you show up content. There is a roadmap, but this internal transformation, there's no roadmap.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is different. And I don't think I cried that much starting my own business, but I cried a lot going through this internal reinvention. So that's such a great point. I didn't even realize. Yeah.
And the impact that you're making too. And because you did that, like I want you to highlight some of your students' success, and like you went through that transformation internally, but now other lives are being affected. Can you share about some of the successes?
Yeah, like our student I shared earlier, one of our students, and she got a job, and just through the live streaming podcast, and our other students just like overall feeling a lot more confident in who they are. Just that parents, they came to me with tears in their eyes for transforming their children from the inside out. And because to many parents, that is a big concern. And I'm actually shocked by how little confidence that today's young children, young adults, youth, they actually have. Very, very low level of self-confidence. So giving them that confidence and also showing them, like one of our students told me, hey, Dr. I didn't even know creativity. She's really creative. She told me, so I don't even know like creativity is actually a thing. I can actually create a career based on how creative I am. Because so at my school, I'm the lead facilitator, and we do this guide on the side. So we call each other facilitator. So besides me, we have a group of digital mentors who come in, who talk about the 3 core components, as case studies or workshops. So one of our digital mentors is really into creativity, and her entire career is based on creativity. She's designing her own t-shirt, her own mugs, her own like high heel shoes, like bags. That opened the students' eyes like, oh my God, I didn't even know that is a thing. And so the speaker showed her the website she can use and seeing what is possible, right? So like just lots of aha. We also, of course, have students who are into entrepreneurship, and they started their own businesses as a result of the program. And for some of our older students, and they finally started to embrace social media. So one of my clients recently, I just helped her get access to LinkedIn Live. She's so excited. I'm just thinking, wow, a few months ago, she had no idea what is LinkedIn, right? And let alone like talking to the camera and starting a live streaming show. But now I'm just looking at her. I was like, wow, so proud. Makes me feel very, very good about what I do, generating that impact at the same time, generating the income to support myself and my family doing what I love. So I love it. Yeah.
And it's huge, again, highlighting the fact of the change that you made is now impacting other lives, and some of the student successes that you shared personally with me, like not just normal businesses, but businesses that are thriving as well. And even for you as well, talking about like that kind of correlates a lot with what I talk about in the book, Productive Profits, is the impact that you make, not just for yourself, your staff, your employees, your family, but also for the community. And it all stems from, creating change, not being, like you mentioned, afraid to stay normal. No, I love and admire everything that you're doing. But Dr. I, what's the best way for listeners to both thank you and learn a little bit more about you and your program?
Yeah, so people can go to my website, which is classroomwithoutwalls.ai, which is my name. So on my website, they can find all of my social media information. And definitely, if the person listening to this, if you are interested in education, definitely check out my What is School For live streaming show or like audio podcast, where I interview leading education professionals, educators, and parents and students to discuss, debate, and disrupt education. And you can learn a lot in that, like practical tips that you can actually implement at home to future-proof your own children.
I love that. And we'll have all those links in the show notes. Dr. I, thank you so much for being on.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me.